Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Debra Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, this is day 6 of Operation Epic Fury. The joint military campaign between the United States and Israel continues. Tehran says the U.S. will bitterly regret the torpedo attack on an Iranian ship in the Indian Ocean, and Iran is expanding drone attacks in Qatar, Abu Dhabi, and Azerbaijan. The Strait of Hormuz, normally jammed with oil tankers and cargo ships, is nearly empty, sending oil and gas prices rising.
Here at home, Senate Republicans rejected a bill to halt the operation against Iran. A twin bill in the House also faces an unlikely path against a GOP majority this morning. Overnight, the first charter flights left the Middle East carrying stranded Americans.
A lot of moving parts, minute-to-minute changes. All week long here in Morning Light, we have been taking you inside the Middle East. On Monday, we were on the ground in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Then Tuesday and Wednesday, we heard from Iranian exiles about life before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. But today, we take an extraordinary look inside Iran itself. We're introducing you to a man connected to a massive secret network of illegal churches, a movement growing rapidly in the heart of the Islamic Republic. Well, Joe Connor, welcome to Morning Light. We're so honored to have you this morning, brother.
Thank you for letting me be here.
Joe, I think you would probably agree you're one of the most unlikely people to be talking about Iran. For people who love English football, soccer, a little over a decade ago, you were playing professionally, and now you are serving one of the main organizations who are resourcing the underground church in Iran. How did this happen? How did Iran grip your heart?
Yeah, it's funny how things work out. I have to be honest, Iran never really gripped my heart, but I did love the stories I was hearing from inside Iran of how the church was growing. It happened because of a friend. I met David Jegnazar, who is now running Elam Ministry. I met him about 20 years ago. We stayed friends. He liked soccer. I liked the work that was being done in Iran. So we stayed friends. And about 9 years ago, when I moved back to America to be with my wife's family, I got involved. And I can honestly say it's been absolutely incredible. Despite all the hard things happening in the Middle East, we have such great stories to tell about how the church is growing.
Well, Iran has been a mystery, I think, to most Americans. And when you add in the next layer down, the Iranian church is a total mystery, a black box for us. But it appears that the church in Iran, by some measure, is the fastest growing church in the world. Do you agree with that? And, of course, all of this under the backdrop of some pretty intense pressure and, for many believers, the threat of death. Is that true, and why is it growing?
Yeah, I can. It's important, which is the fastest growing church in the world, but I am a witness. I've seen this with my own eyes. I go there, I meet the people, I work with them. It is growing extremely fast. To give you some big number ideas, from about the early 2000s, there was a few thousand believers from a Muslim background. Now the most conservative estimates put that at as low as 1 million, but many people are saying 2 million or 3. We always give conservative estimates because we just don't know. But I know for myself, I've worked with thousands of people from a Muslim background who Jesus Christ has transformed their life. The reason why it's happening in the last 20 years, I can tell you the power of the scriptures. Even though it's illegal to read a Bible inside Iran, Iranian people love to read, and they're reading that book in their own language. Islam is in Arabic in Iran, so when they read a Bible in Farsi, it's life-changing. Brave men and women who have been persecuted for their faith are still going out sharing the gospel. There's complete life transformation. One of the other major factors is for 20, 30 years, many Iranian people are disillusioned with their government. And so because they're disillusioned with the government, they're disillusioned with Islam. But I can honestly say the main reason why all of this is happening in Iran is because Jesus is really alive. I have friends that went to bed as Muslims and woke up as Christians. So we cannot take any credit for that, nor can we explain it. Jesus is doing something special, and many of the Iranian people are responding because they've seen the real dark side of Islam for the last 47 years.
So, Joe, I know there are people who are saying, hey, please rewind what you just said. Going to bed believing in one way and waking up believing in an entirely different way. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe you've heard rumors of the man in white. I mean, I have friends that have experienced that, so they can't explain it. We have lots of stories where, our teams on the ground will be distributing the scriptures, which is illegal. And they'll give a Bible to somebody, and the person will say, "Oh, I had a dream I was supposed to read this." That
Wow.
happens often. It's not like everybody is going to bed and having a dream about Jesus. Most people are reading the scriptures and saying, I like this Jesus. I want
It's
to
that
follow him
powerful.
more." Yeah, but it's and life transformation. Simply, you've got a ton of people that are saying, Jesus Christ transformed my life. He can transform yours. That's what's happening. It's that simple, and it's regular people doing this. We train, we give them discipleship, but these are passionate people. Like I said, they've been under that Islamic regime. Islam looks different all over the world for different families and different people. I work with a lot of Muslims. I love them. But the Iranian government and the Islam that it enforces on people is a very bad thing. And so people have been under that for long enough, and they are looking for alternatives, and many of them encounter Jesus.
So, Joe, I can hear somebody saying, why would you put people that you love, that you care about, in danger if you know that the scriptures are illegal, if you know that meeting, proselytizing, sharing your faith, even having a conversation about the Bible could send them to prison? Some might say, well, that's pretty reckless. If you really love these people, tell them to keep it a secret, and certainly don't distribute scriptures on the streets of Tehran.
Yeah, I mean, we have to tell our people to slow down, to be quite honest. When you meet some of these women, especially, that have been under the pressures of Islam, been in some hard marriages. I was listening to a story about a woman who was married off at 9 years old, and, just went through a really hard life. When these women encounter freedom and encounter love, like, they've never been told that God loves them. They've never been told they're made in the image of God. They've been second-class citizens their whole lives. And so we have to tell them to slow down. So some people, they need a bit of pushing and guidance, but the vast majority of them, their lives are transformed, and they want others to experience the same thing. So it's more of a case of we're asking them to slow down. The other thing is, we don't believe in forcing religion on anybody, but we do believe that everybody deserves a choice. We believe that everybody should have a choice to choose what faith they want to follow. And in Iran, for the last 47 years, people haven't been given that choice.
So, Joe, so describe for me then, if someone for the very first time, I have a friend who's Iranian, and he describes growing up being really force-fed a diet of both history and religion that really only started in 1979. But now he is living in America and has the freedom then to say yes or no to a religious belief, or yes or no to a particular intellectual discipline, or choose the path that he would like to pursue. What does this kind of freedom to choose your religion, your belief, do? How have you seen this transform people inside Iran?
Yeah, so to give you an example, most Iranians and Muslim people actually in general, just feel like they've not got a choice. If you're born Muslim, you are Muslim. That's what you are, and you can't change from that. In Iran, it's actually apostasy. It's a crime by law. If you leave Islam, it's called apostasy. But I'll give you an example, which just was amazing. So we've done quite a bit of soccer ministry in the region, where, we go and serve people from all walks of life, Muslim, Christian, all different backgrounds. We serve them. We have soccer academies. It's absolutely wonderful. This one time I was working with a group of people, and I shared a little bit of my story, and, you could tell, oh, it's this white fella from England. Of course, he's a Christian. But I was with one of my friends, Hussein. And Hussein got what I said. Hussein, just tell him a bit of your story. And he spoke in the Farsi language, which they understand. And he said, my name is Hussein. And as soon as he said it, the people loved him. They said, oh, Hussein, you must be a Muslim like us. We're so glad you're here. And he said, no, I was a Muslim, but now I'm a Christian.
Wow.
And I felt the atmosphere change, because for the first time, this group of Persian people had never heard of another Muslim that had become a Christian. They didn't know it was possible. And after the time we had together, which was wonderful, a few of them, one by one, would go up to him and say, tell me more about that. Is that possible? And so just that idea, so that has been multiplying over the last 20 years, I would say, where people have thought, is it possible? Can I choose? And so that's another factor as to why many people are turning away from Islam inside Iran.
I want to ask you one more question, and maybe this is the most difficult one for those in our audience who are hearing this. Never have an interest to travel to Iran, certainly in their lifetime, or may wait a decade or so until everything simmers down or things change. But how can then we be a part of showing love and hospitality, not just to Iranian neighbors, but to Muslim neighbors here in America or wherever we are?
One of my favorite stories on this subject, I heard in New York from a person, and he had never done much ministry with Muslims before, and he decided to invite this Muslim family to his home for dinner. It was they were Muslims from a North African country. And partway through dinner, the man, the head of the household, like put his head in his hands and he got really upset. And this American was like, I've offended them, I must have fed them pork or done something wrong. And he said, excuse me, what's wrong? Have I done something to upset you? And this Muslim man raised his eyes and looked at him and said, I've been in America for 6 years, and this is the first time I've been in the home of an American for dinner. So I would just say loving people, caring for people, inviting them over for dinner is a big step. You don't have to get into arguments about which faith and that faith, but many Muslims, Jesus is a prophet in Islam, so many Muslims are open to talking about Jesus. There are some that are hostile and are angry, but most of them are just regular people, same as me and you. They like raising their families, having nice dinners, going on vacations. But I would say community and extending hospitality is a huge, huge thing that we can do.
Joe, you have left us wanting more. Get to know Joe and the people at Elam, elam.com. Joe, thank you for loving our neighbors in Iran and in Atlanta so very, very well.
Thank you so much.
Great to have you, brother. Well, coming up on Morning Light, empathy and grace for all. Sparrow Place is a faith-based nonprofit working to end human trafficking. You'll learn how they're making an impact specifically in your county. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Since the beginning of Morning Light, we have highlighted the impact of human trafficking. Pennsylvania is 9th in the nation for reported cases. Too often, trafficking can seem like too big of a problem. But Sparrow Place says no problem is too big for God. Joining me is the chairman of the board, Lisa Weigard, to explain how the gospel is changing the lives of survivors. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about Sparrow Place.
Sparrow Place is a faith-based nonprofit based out of Southern York County, specifically Glen Rock. And we are a group of board members, staff, and volunteers that love the Lord and just try really hard to love on those that maybe have never encountered love or the face of Jesus or freedom.
How did Sparrow Place come about?
Sparrow Place was started by a wonderful woman, a passionate lady named Jan Wilson, who loved the Lord and worked in various Southern York County ministries. And she found firsthand that trafficking is a thing. It is local, it is not far away. And she had this heart to open this home where people could find respite and rest, and they could see the hands and the feet of the Lord amongst them. And we continue to carry that torch in her absence.
And what are you seeing in your county?
Oh, Debra, we are seeing, the majority that we're seeing are parental trafficking, which is where the families would portion their child out, sadly, to be sexually violated. Numbers-wise, it often becomes the mother who is the trafficker, which was shocking news to me. But I also see it as, specifically in Southern York County, as almost like a wicked marketplace. So you have the marketplace of Kensington, where you hear stories of women that are in cages. during the day, heavily drugged to be subdued and then released into the streets to make money for their pimps. You have the wicked marketplace of children who have been groomed since infancy to believe that this sexual abuse is a part of being a woman or a part of being a human, that this is just part of life and they don't know any different. You have the wicked marketplace of, like I said, parents that take their children to the bigger cities and farm them out to men and then come back home like business is normal, back to school and work on Monday. And these women many times don't even realize that they're victims because they've been indoctrinated to believe that this, like I said, is a normal thing. And so our job is to express to them the identity of Christ, to show to them that there is another way, that there's freedom, and that there's love, and that love doesn't always, almost never, equates to sex.
So as far as what do you provide for them?
So right now we're focused on educating. So we're focused on teaching the youth. We've been in several of the local high schools, and we are trying to reduce the pipeline from the front side by educating what to look for. What are the red flags of trafficking? What is grooming? And grooming is simply this insidious way of being very patient. The enemy is just super patient and watches and absorbs knowledge and finds their most vulnerable places and then just feeds on that and uses it to their advantage for monetary gain. Sometimes they'll present it as the most vulnerable would need funds, so they would promise funds but never give them. And so we just notice what's happening and try to counteract it with the love of Christ. And like I said, stop the pipeline on the front side.
So what is the reaction when you talk to teenagers in schools?
Wide eyes, dropped jaws. They just don't believe because we've been told that it's, a white van to be, aware of, or that it's happening far, far away. And it's really just it's happening here. We've also heard stories of students that have been indoctrinated by their trafficker, and they'll ride the school bus into school, sneak off and go to the Rudders nearby, operate with their pimp in a local hotel. The pimp would bring them back to the school bus at the end of the day, and they would continue back home as if nothing happened.
Oh my goodness.
People just don't believe that this is happening, but it is.
That's what I was going to say. I think many people don't believe that it's happening right here in our backyard.
It's true. It is happening right here in the big cities and the rural places nearby.
And as far as parents, what is the reaction that you receive when you talk with them?
Parents, again, jaw dropped. They just immediately want to shelter their children and never let them go out into the world. But the scary thing is that it doesn't even have to be out into the world. A lot of times, social media is the access point to a lot of these insidious traffickers. So what seems to be an innocent game can create some communication issues. A lot of the social media platforms are the perfect place for traffickers to gather knowledge on you, your location, what you're interested in, and then they'll start to speak these interests to kind of gain your trust, and it just kind of moves into darker places from there.
So your goal is to open a shelter.
Yes.
Share with us.
So what we've discovered is the trafficking victim, the woman, is not really in a safe space to be mixed into other populations. So the YWCA, for instance, has several beds dedicated to trafficking victims, but it's also in the homeless community and the domestic violence community. And a lot of times those overlap. A lot of the domestic violence have also been trafficked and vice versa. But most recently there was a sting in New York City which discovered a dozen women that had been trafficked, and they sent them over to the YWCA for housing, and they were released from their driver and they just scattered on the street. They just did not go into the institution of the YW because maybe it was unfamiliar or unsafe or maybe not trustworthy, but they scattered back into what they know, they went back to what's familiar to them, and that's just heartbreaking to me.
So what do you want to provide for them?
I want to provide a safe space for them to find rest, to hear who they actually are, to encounter the freedom of the Lord. And we understand that a lot of times the enemy has used and weaponized Scripture in their tactics of trafficking. So we don't smash the Bible over their head per se, but we're going to show them this is what Jesus looks like. This is the truth of who you are. You were meant for freedom. You were meant for beauty. You were meant for more. And yeah, we're just excited to do that. But it will require a completely different budget. So we have previously worked on a volunteer budget, but now we're realizing these women, they need more. They need 24/7 coverage with highly trained and qualified professionals, and that completely levels us into a completely different budget. So this year, while we're focusing on education, we're also focusing on fundraising.
So tell us about the fundraising.
So we have several fundraisers lined up for 2026. We have a bingo on May 30th at New Freedom Community Center. We have a documentary planned for Praise Community Church in August. We have a 5K that we did last year. It was our kickoff 5K, and it was really well attended and just beautiful. That's happening in October. And then we have a banquet in September that's going to be held at York Alliance Church in York. And all of this can be found on the website.
So through this fundraiser, what will you provide there? How many beds and what type of services for the women?
Sure. So we have 5 beds in this rural house, one level rancher, and it's in just a peaceful, serene setting. We've also found that sometimes when houses or places of shelter are close by, they're traffickers, they're tempted to escape, and they're tempted to go back to what they know. So this is kind of in the countryside of downtown Glen Rock, and it's just beautiful and peaceful. So in addition to the clinical 24/7 coverage of professionals, we also hope to just love on them well so that we can show them there are other options.
Over the years, how have you seen lives change as far as meeting with people who have been trafficked?
We just the realization that this is mostly a parental thing. We've discovered that a lot of times victims don't even know that they're a victim, that they don't know any different until they escape and find either marriage or friendships, and they reveal to them that what has happened to them is not normal. And then they've sometimes created almost like a split personality where they have these 2 lives where they would operate in this kind of dark way, but then be highly functioning during the day. And it's a sad way of surviving, but it's the way God created us in such a violent and insidious nature that they can kind of compact and compartmentalize what's happened to them. And our task is just to show them that the way that you were treated, the way you were taught is not normal and natural, and show them a better way.
And we have talked since the beginning of Morning Light, so many different ministries that are dedicated to human trafficking and really just spreading the gospel and letting them know that this is something that is not good and there is another way.
Yes, so we are really blessed to have a scattering of Christ-based women and organizations that fight against human trafficking. I know you've had North Star and Greenlight. They are wonderful human beings behind the scenes. They are beautiful on the inside and the out. But North Star specifically has been such a resource to us. I meet with them, I meet with their board members, and they are so forthright in sharing in their information because as a sister organization, we work better together and we can cast a wider net to help more people that way.
Yeah, and make a difference. That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing what you're doing, what your ministry is doing.
Thanks for having me.
To learn more about Sparrow Place or take part in their upcoming fundraisers, check out sparrowplace.org. Stay with us. We're back right after the break. Welcome back. This weekend, we spring forward. Daylight saving time begins at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Be sure to turn your clocks ahead 1 hour before going to bed Saturday night. And coming up on Monday on Morning Light, his church taken, his home destroyed in a drone strike. But can a Christian faith really overcome the urge to hate? Ukrainian Pastor Mark Sergiev answers that question in a special edition of Morning Light, Trials of Faith in Ukraine. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Oh, thank you, Debra. It's going to be a great conversation tomorrow. Well, one of my earliest memories is sitting in front of the television, watching the news of the American hostages finally coming home from Iran. Some of you remember that. After 444 days in captivity, they stepped off that U.S. Air Force plane in January of 1981, greeted by a relieved nation. For a long time, that moment defined Iran for me. It was a distant, a complicated country of more than 90 million people, colored mostly by bad headlines and a very rich history, a rich past. But years later, when I began making Iranian friends, everything changed. This week on Morning Light, we introduce you to Iranian exiles describing open hearts and open minds inside Iran. Even under the weight of oppression and control, people are longing for the right to know what they believe, to choose faith or reject it, not have it chosen for them. Moments like this may come only once in a generation. An ancient door appears to be opening. Let's not miss this opportunity. For Debra and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching today. Now go check on your neighbors and don't miss tomorrow's special Morning Light on the war in Ukraine.